Late.
Everybody stop shooting. Everybody stop shooting. Everybody stop shooting. Everybody stop shooting.
Welcome to part 2 of Neighbors in the Crossfire. I'm Christopher Nars, the community contributors and engagement editor here at WHYY. In this episode, we continue the conversation about the gun violence crisis in Philadelphia with a look at the code of the streets.
I had a son at the age of 13 years old, wanted to hang with older boys who were playing with guns. Where were they getting the guns from? At the age of 15 years old, that same son ended up in prison, sentenced to 99 years in jail because of the no snitching rule in the streets. There is no such thing as no snitching.
Joining me in conversation is Carl Day, pastor of Culture Changing Christians, also known as the Hood Pastor, Shuja Moore, creator of Walkies, and Ike Raw, founders of Unsolved Murders in Philly with Ike Raw. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me for this important conversation.
Thank you for having us.
So I assembled you three on purpose because I wanted to talk about something that often gets left off the table when we're talking about reducing gun violence, which is street culture or the code of the streets. Pastor Carl, I'll start with you. Does it frustrate you at all that we don't give enough attention and acknowledgement to street culture and how that enables and promotes gun violence?
I would definitely say it does frustrate me. I think that ultimately a lot of times, man, we have policymakers, activists, or quote unquote organizers sitting at tables that really don't understand street culture, understand some of the codes in which people do operate under, or the lack thereof code. And I don't think a lot of that is taken into account when people are trying to talk about how to solve the ills of our community and what's really plaguing our people, which really fails to bring that delicate balance that's needed when you start talking about how to bring tangible solutions to our community and solve the issues of violence.
Now, Ike Raw, I guess that's why you and others would argue that the people most affected by this problem, those who are on the streets, actually need to be in these rooms, whether it's at City Hall or otherwise, to actually be able to inform what's going on.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, like the pastor just said, you have to have people who have that experience, who've been through those type of situations, because as we see, a lot of these shootings and killings in the streets are retaliation killings. A lot of those retaliations are because people cooperated, people broke the code of the streets. And, we'll get into that a little later on. But I absolutely agree. You have to have people who know what's going on because we got our pulse on the situation. We know what's going on.
Shu?
Yeah. At the end of the day, yes, I agree that we don't. It's as simple as this, man. We have to be the ones to help solve this problem. We have to be the ones because we understand the psychology. The psychology didn't start yesterday. It's been generational, and many of us aged out of it. And I think those people, what we call credible messengers, are the ones that need to step in and be leaders in the community. And that's what I'm more interested in.
Ike Raw, in your opening statement, you said something about breaking the code of the street. Are you referring to a particular code, or is there a series of codes that you see now and you go and they just throw them out the window?
Well, yeah, the latter is true. But as far as what I'm saying is that, when you're in the streets, we have to understand that there's only two ways that you get out of the streets. You're either going to die or you're going to go to jail enough times where you're going to say, look, I got to do something different. So sometimes we get arrested and we get pressured from our mothers, our girlfriends, to tell what we took part in the crime and done. When that's breaking the code of the street, you're not supposed to do that. So our families, most of the time, don't understand the street code. They don't understand that, yes, you're putting your son, your father, your husband in danger when you're telling him to cooperate against people who he did crimes with. And, there's going to be repercussions that come with that. And that's why you see a lot of the stuff that's going on now.
Shu, what was it about street culture that most people don't understand? And what was it about street culture that sucked you in at a young age?
I think when it comes to street culture, it's really a myth. I mean, a lot of people try to abide by this standard of we're protecting each other. But when you get inside a prison and you really see the full tape play itself out, people are scared and lost and really ignorant and don't even understand how to operate in society. So I saw a lot of people telling on themselves. The majority of cases are ended in a plea deal. So people telling on themselves. What I see and what I saw are really just lost people. And we need again, Black and brown leaders on the ground, helping the lost kids understand how to even operate in society. A lot of them are lost, they're hurt, and they need direction in life.
Pastor Carl, you're one of those people, some would say, is a credible messenger. You've been getting headlines lately for your engagement with the young brothers on the street. What is it about gun violence and street culture that you've learned by talking with the people on the street that maybe our viewers and even the political class don't know?
Well, I'll state this. You know, one of the reasons that I'm credible is because I've been on that side of things too before. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, people in my community understand, they know that. I've been arrested, you know, multiple times, been through parts of the system myself. But much of what Shu said, to be honest with you, I think that one of the things that people need to understand is that a lot of people that's out there really need tangible options. A lot of what's being presented is services, programs, projects, all kinds of stuff that actually takes time. Brothers that are living out there are living for today. You see what I'm saying? So also to Shu's point, when we send forth what we call or deem to be, whom we deem to be credible messengers, those same particular messengers need resources themselves. You know, one of the sides of activism that many people don't understand, especially amongst community, is that guess what? Your activists need to be sustained while they go out and lay their lives down for this particular cause in the process as well. Because this is a very thankless, hard work that literally pulls you away from your families and everything else. So a lot of times you have these credible messengers who have a heart, or you have Black men who want to step up and actually lead and get out there and do such work. But at the same time, they got to be bivocational. They don't have the big budgets of funding that other organizations who are very, very disconnected from those that are out there in towards these issues are getting, which eventually pulls those men and women away who are credible, that can go out here and reach these people. So I would say that, you know, and I believe that I will say this just for clarity's sake. I will say that to a degree, I think that some people within the framework of Philadelphia have been doing a good job of trying to reach those who have been on the ground. Because I don't want to discredit any of those brothers that I know personally who have done a considerable time upstate and everything else that are working with city leaders right now currently. But at the same time, again, those resources, there needs to be more, because it's going to take more than just the same usual suspects, the 10 to 12 of us that keep trying to do what we can the best way that we can with the very little bit that we have, especially to draw and lure those youth in, man, because gun violence, the way it's influenced and perpetuated through hip hop, through media, through everything else, in order for us to really break them free of that influence, we got to be able to show them that that there's actually somewhat of considerable what they view as success on this other side. You know what I'm saying? So we fighting up against a machine, you know, mentality, psychology, as Shu said, amongst also, you know, again, what's being pushed through.
Ike Raw, is it ever possible, I mean, you guys have transformed your life, but once you get into street culture, how hard is it to break away from it? Or do you ever break away from it? Is it always still there and you have to kind of fight against it?
Well, see, that's a touchy subject to get on, because I look at it like this. If, you know, you was in the streets, you know, you come from the streets, like I said earlier, however you got out, that's how you got out. But, you know, just like the brother was saying, you have some people that's, you know, claim to do this work, but they're not really about the work. You have a lot of dudes who are in the streets saying, you know, I changed my life, I want to get out here and touch the youth, but they really condoning the same nonsense that we went through. Understand what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's always going to be in you, but at some point in time, you got to wake up. I don't care, maybe you have a baby, that's going to wake you up. If you get shot, that might wake you up. You go to jail for a certain amount of time, like I say, that might wake you up. But it's up to us, because we've been there and we've done that. Like, I've been in the streets, I've been to prison and all that too, understand what I'm saying? So that's why when I talk, if I'm in the streets, I'm talking, they understand, they know what I'm talking about, you understand? And I ain't take the easy way out, like we talking about right now, where if you're in the streets, yeah, you got to know that it is a code of the streets. Whether some people like it or not, it is. And that's the problem now, that a lot of people don't respect it. Whether, you know, you get out the streets now, we can say, well, you know, I was dumb and ignorant. Yeah, I was in the streets now, but you still got people out there doing the same things. The streets don't change. Just the players in the game change. And that's what we got to understand. So that's what we got to talk about.
Shu, did you want to respond to that?
You know, when I get out there and talk to the guys, they want to transition out of it. They don't want to stay there. But it's like they're at war. Not only are they at war against the society, against the people that live 2 blocks down from them, but they're at war with themselves, right? And that's where you need these credible messengers, because they don't want to just hear from anybody. You know, with the police strategy of this deterrence, I forget the acronym or the name for it, where they try to get like the influencers in a room and threaten them. These guys have already committed to, I'm going to die or I'm going to jail. That's just what it is. And until they hear from somebody that can tell them, look, I've been in jail, I've been shot, I've been on that hospital bed, and I'm telling you, that's not the direction. Not only do they need to hear from people like that, but but they also need to see that same person be successful in life. And then they can see, because right now, who do they look to be successful? The local drug dealer, because there's no lawyers, doctors, and et cetera, coming from their neighborhood. The one that made it from their neighborhood is a Meek Mill. Other than that, there's nobody to look to. So now we have an opportunity for people such as myself, Pastor Day, Ike Raw, to come in and say, look, no, you can make it out. You can be successful. But, these type of organizations, no more. There's a lot of organizations, grassroots types organizations run by Black men, Black women as well, that need the funding. There's a lot of nonprofits that get in the way. And like Pastor Day did say, I want to congratulate and thank all the people who've been out here. I think this violence affects us all, and we all care about it. But at the end of the day, to really solve this, it has to be solved within first.
Ike Raw, if you were running the Office of Violence Prevention, what would you do differently that the city isn't doing?
Well, first of all, we got to talk about resources, because we all know, like, we can't just go around telling people, come out of this. We talk about this all the time. You got brothers who really out here making a living for themselves. Whatever they doing, they selling the drugs, they robbing somebody, they really making a living. They might got a child they taking care of, paying on rent or whatever. So we have to have something to replace that. We need these resources, just like the brother just said. These programs that's really, grassroots, really doing the job, they need the resources. They need the funding to, give these kids more opportunities. When you give kids opportunities, they have more options. At the end of the day, they don't want to be standing on the corner because they can go somewhere else, learn this computer. They can, learn this education, study this and, train for a job. There's a lot of programs out here that do good things, but they don't get the recognition like some other programs, because you see the same people all the time. So I would start with resources. I would also start with family. We need family structure again. It starts in the household. These kids don't come home from the hospital, born as a child with a gun in their hand. At some point along the way, somebody is teaching them how to go out here and shoot somebody, rob somebody, and in the household, somebody's not taking care of that. We see it all the time, man. We grew up in it, some of us, so we know how it goes. We got to be real with ourselves. So we can't just put it all on, the city, the politicians, and everything like that. We got to be real with ourselves, man. At the end of the day, and that's what it's going to take. Until we start making change in ourselves, we ain't going to see the change in the streets.
To what you were saying is, when we talk about the things that are left off the table when we're talking about gun violence, it's not just the culture of the streets, but it's about parenting and socialization. Those things almost always get left off. I mean, we're very quick to lay the blame at the foot of the police commissioner, at the district attorney, and even at the mayor's office. We never really talk about personal accountability. If they do, they'll call you a Republican. Pastor Carr, what would you say to that?
I totally agree, man. And I think Shu and Ike Raw is hitting on great points, man. Shu was pointing to something about the internal. And that's the thing, man. Internally, man, we really have to start to bring forth a different mentality, accountability towards our mentality. And I know oftentimes one thing that we have to do as adults, especially millennial adults, I'm 35, so I'm still considered one and whatnot, but I think we pretty much all are. But with that being said, we have to accept our role, how we've been implicit into what's going on with our youth. I always hear people say these youngins out of control. When I'm on blocks, when I'm on corners, especially in my side of North Philly, and I hear them say, yeah, these young boys, you can't tell them nothing. Well, guess what? I say, listen, I can't tell the difference between you and the young boys. How about that? Y'all 30-something, they 19, 20, and all y'all glorifying the same stuff. You see what I'm saying? So the same way. And I'm talking about even the working class, minorities who live in our community, they still esteem the same trappers that's in the music. They still esteem the same twerkers, the same shakers, the same whomever. And it's like, how do we expect the youth that's directly connected to us to think differently or see differently or work or idolize or aspire to be anything else than what we already esteem ourselves? So to Ike's point about the parenting, these are the people that's the parents that's on social media. You see what I'm saying? These folks 30-something, 40-something, they sitting here into the same things that the teenagers into. So that's where parenting is at anyway. So we got to deal with that mentality. Also deal with the street code or the myth that Shu was speaking of, that what the street code is or what it's really not. Because, see, I remember at one point, and I'm sure the others can relate, you couldn't just jump off the step and hustle on the block. Those blocks were controlled. And, you couldn't just do that, especially if they already knew that really wasn't your struggle. You got a lot of youngins out here who got two parents in their lives doing stuff for them, and they don't got no business being out there, but they glorify the aura and the allure that come with the streets. So this is why you see a plethora of young mothers out here saying, my son really was a good child. And guess what? He really was at heart. Like Ike said, he didn't leave the hospital putting guns in his hands. but that's the culture, that's the mentality, that's that stuff that a politician or nobody else can change. So with that being said, that's part of the myth, because by code, he shouldn't even be out there. Secondly, you talk about people snitching. Guess what? This is something that the streets got to deal with too. Anybody still in the streets will tell you this. There's a whole lot of dudes that still was snitches or currently snitching, but got money. So it's a pass for them to still hustle or front work to the community. So it's like, on one end, y'all can't say let's kill the rats, but at the same time, it's known rats that still run around the city getting money and still infesting the community with drugs. So the people with this false dichotomy of street code got to really deal with their own hypocrisy. You see what I'm saying? It's like one person getting a pass on one side and the other. And in the midst of it, the community got to understand, if you're involved in street activity, man, you say something, you see something, say something. You know what I mean? At some point, that's part of community policing. We got to be able to sit here and clearly stand up and say at some point, yo, listen, this is not going to become our societal norm. When are we going to sit there and start to reject the notion or the narrative that our children got to grow up and track because it's a way of life? You see what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, all of those components got to come together.
Shu and Ike, I see both of you guys nodding in the affirmative. I'll give you a chance to respond to everything you heard the pastor say. Ike, you first.
No, I just wanted to say that's another valid point what he was saying about, you know, you have a lot of rats out here in the streets that's flooding the streets with drugs. You know, they come home, you know, to the bed. Now they getting work from whoever. Who know where they getting it from? You already done help the feds pit, you know, 10, 20 people away. You could be getting 10, 30 bricks. You flooding the community again. So here we go. Is the young brother's dying from selling the rats work. But you got people going around killing people or shooting people because he's saying you ratted on me, you told on me. And that's what I keep wanting to, you know, stress to people, want people to understand. When you are here in these streets, it's no rules, it's no code, it's no respect for anything. The streets don't love nobody. If your son, your daughter, your husband make the wrong decision and they feel as though, well, I'm going to testify or I'm not going to testify or I'm going to stand up and do whatever, that's the decision they made. Just like when the lady just was on, you know, the clip we heard when we came on, she said her son is doing 99 years because, you know, he didn't want to snitch, he didn't want to tell. That's the price some people pay. He'll probably be in jail. I hope not. I hope maybe he could get out, you know, get his mind together. But he might sit in jail for 99 years or the rest of his life because of the street code. Them streets don't care about him. I would love to speak to his mother, ask his mother, do the streets take care of her? Do they pay her mortgage? Do they pay her rent? If he had kids, do they take care of his kids? Because I can guarantee you she's going to say no. And that's what we got to wake up and tell our youth and let the people know. The streets don't love us. So all this nonsense about no snitching, stop stitching and all that, come on, man. We need to stop it, man. We need to stop it. We need to stop it now.
Shu?
These brothers are both well spoken. I mean, I'm just reiterating what they already said, but a code of the streets. Who wrote this code? Where does manual come from? There's no code of the streets. What you really have is a bunch of people following each other and trying to be accepted among their peer groups. But when the reality hits that you can't operate that way in society and law enforcement comes down and people get arrested, you see all that stuff eradicate. And then there are a few people who will maintain, like won't tell on the situation, and they find themselves locked up forever or locked up for a long time. And I don't really hold on to this code of telling, not telling. I know that the street is really strong on you're not supposed to tell. But again, I'll never forget when I spent my years on the inside, a lot of the people who did or didn't tell, I saw fear in their eyes. You know, I saw the fact that they realized they were operating in the world. They were totally lost. They were in the streets, had no idea what they really were doing or who they really were. And now they're sitting in prison with forever to do. And having known that, damn, I really made some major mistakes while I was a young guy. And that's why I think Pastor Day touched on, and Ike Raw, that our family structure, that's where we really need a lot of investment. Because once we saw that our family, you hear a lot of the older generation talk about it now. Once that family structure got destroyed, you see this lawlessness that's going around in our communities.
Pastor Day, to Shu's point, you know, I've had a conversation twice today with people on the topic of gun violence, and I've heard this saying that what we're seeing in the city of Philadelphia with over 300 people killed so far, that this is the chickens coming home to roost. That the young kids out there shooting are the ones who grew up without their fathers because their fathers were taken from them during the crack epidemic and the era of mass incarceration. Is that an accurate statement?
I definitely think it's an accurate statement. And my appeal to the Black community would be this right here. It's up to us to reinstill the village. You know, we have to really restore that village, man. I mean, oftentimes we sit in these rooms and we hear things brought up about jobs, resources, family structure. Truth of the matter is this: we say it starts at home, that's the easiest way out. We know it starts at home, but home's not home anymore. If we know that, we drop all these great statistics on all these big platforms, CNN, you name it. We got black activists and all these well-spoken people. 1 out of every 3 black men go and counter the prison system and all that. Well, if we know that, right, that means we understand the reality. Why are we failing to jump out and love our neighbor as we love ourselves? Why are we failing to go ahead and reach the young brother who don't have a dad, and we watching him at 12 already be outside in his midnight, in his 1 a.m., and we're looking at him knowing the trajectory of where his life is headed, but won't step up and say, you know what, listen, let me help him out. Or see that he got shoes on that almost got holes in it, or see that his mother's running in and out, or he really don't have a consistent man in his life. That's where it's up to us to step up and say, you know what, we're going to be the village to each other rather than compete with each other or try to down talk and downplay each other for what we do and don't have. So yes, this is what we see is the byproduct of what the buildup was what the buildup was doing throughout all this time, when those fathers wasn't around, when those fathers were incarcerated, when those fathers were dying, and we've been losing, black men in our communities for various reasons. But at the end of the day, again, we know what our reality is. And to Ike's point, to Shu's point, to that point, Chris, like, yo, listen, we have to step up and become that village, man. We cannot wait for politicians or anyone else. And I think Mayor Kenny said it one point to me in a conversation, but he's a 60-something-year-old white man. I'm gonna tell you what, I'd be a failure as a pastor and a black man in my own community as a leader if I'm expecting a 60-year-old white man to change my community anyway. That ain't happening. You see what I'm saying? Like I literally failed if I'm expecting him. I got 16-year-old son, 13-year-old son, 7-year-old son, and a 1-year-old daughter. If I'm waiting for any of those people to change the conditions for the realities that my teens face, then I've already lost. So I now have to mentor teenage boys, do what I have to do and reach those boys so that ultimately, guess what? They don't put me in a position where I got to compromise everything that I stand for to go ahead and protect my own boys. So I got to go ahead and help become that to them. And I just think that if I got the time to do that as a husband, a father of 4, and a pastor in 2 different places, and a lot of other things that I got on my plate, every last one of us, man, we can go ahead and carve some time out and balance that out.
Shu, I'm going to go to you and then Ike. I know that all 3 of you have spent time in the community talking to, not just the politicians, but actually talking to the brothers on the street. And I'm just wondering if you can give our viewers a bit of insight into how they respond to you when you go to them and with that message of, hey, man, you got to do better. Are they like, nah, old head, I don't want to hear it? Or are they receptive because they think that you're credible?
Right. So to Pastor Dave's point, it does take a village. And, the black family has been in danger since we reached the shores of this country. And we have attempted to build villages. They've been destroyed as well. Despite all that, I'm still encouraged. I think one thing that 2020 showed us is that the status quo doesn't work, right? So what I realized is that we need, we all have a sphere of influence. And I can't go to middle of North Philly, maybe where Ike Raw's from, and start talking to these guys. I mean, I probably could, but offhand, they'd be like, who's this guy? But one thing, in my neighborhood from 46th Street, them guys know me. They heard of me before I went to prison. When I got out, they heard that I got out. So that's where I focus my attention. And when I go out there, I come with credibility. They know who I am. They know who my brothers were. They know what work I put in. But now I'm trying to transition them out of that. So when I say, the first question I ask them is, who do you know who's been successful on this block? And they'll be quick to tell you, nobody. Yeah, exactly, nobody. So we got to start thinking about how to do this a different way. And that's one of the reasons why I actually joined the Enterprise Center, led by Black woman Della Clark. And it's a wonderful staff there. And they're really trying to, think through how can we keep the Black community in Walnut Hill, in this section of West Philly. And me as a community engagement coordinator there, I'm really focused on just my particular block where what I say holds value, and then try to find ways really to transition people out of the drug world and into entrepreneurship. I think that's where we actually have a chance of helping people transition out of crime.
What about you, Ike? I know when you show up, they think, as you told me before, sometimes they say, man, what are you about to protest? So you've already built a reputation as a leader, even if you don't necessarily embrace those titles. When you step to these young guys, what do they say to you? How do they respond?
See, that's what I want to say. Like, I don't necessarily say that I step to anybody.
Okay.
Understand what I mean? I only talk to people in the touch on what Shu just said. I'm only talk to and speak with people who want the help. Understand what I mean? I'm just being real. I'm not wasting my time talking to somebody who I know you just shot somebody last night. You plan on shooting somebody again tomorrow. You ain't trying to hear nothing I'm saying at all. So I'm not wasting my time with you. I'm saying I tried to talk to you before. You ain't trying to hear nothing. You telling me get out your face. So I'm going to talk to this other kid who think what you doing is cool. So I'm gonna let him know because I see that he engaging me. I see that he don't really want to be out here, and I said I see he want to be saved. Those are the people that I'm talking to, because just like Shu say, you can't necessarily try to beat people in the head all day with the same get off the corner, get a job, do this, do that. They're gonna at one point in time they're gonna say, well, what you got for me? You keep telling me get off the corner, get a job. What a job at? You got a job? Don't give me a job application to fill out. Take me to a job right now where I can work. I want to work. Oh, hey, do you got a job for me? And if you ain't got that, then you just standing there looking stupid at the end of the day. And that's that's how it is. So my time that I invest with the youth is with people who I know. Just like he say, he can't come to no Philly. Just like he say, he might can just like me. I can't just show up in West Philly or South Philly or hey, what y'all doing? You get up. Come on, hey, who's you? Like, get out. They don't know me. Understand what I'm saying? So where I come up, where I grew up at, where I did destruction to my community, that's why I invest my time at to go back to show them, because they seen me when I was out there. So it's credible now when they sit there. No, he about that work. I remember when he was out here doing what he was doing. So you got to listen to old head, you know what he's talking about. So that's the difference. And you got to have something to give them. You can't just tell them stop doing this. We ain't got nothing to give them.
Pastor Carl Day, we got 30 seconds left. Last words.
So yeah, I just usually approach brothers, and to Ike's point, I definitely understand this. I understand what he's talking about. I'll say what I oftentimes do, I approach people, man, and I ask questions. I think some of the best ways to engage a man is just ask questions rather than just give out instruction and tell them what to do, what not to do. So I ask critical questions that make them think, something that really make them that resonate within and really make them think about what does my future look like? What happens if I do get locked up? The people that I say I'm out here trying to provide for, who's going to provide for them if I fall down? You know what I'm saying? What's the likelihood of, things happening to me, or what's the likelihood of me actually succeeding long-term at what I'm doing? So I usually go ask those questions, man, have those brothers process that, think about it, because I notice nobody else around them are talking about those type of things. And, I consistently just stay consistent with them. You know what I mean? Just let them know that I love them and love on them with no agenda, no conditions.
I appreciate the conversation. It's Carl Day, pastor of Culture Changing Christians, Shuja, creator of Walkies, and Ike Raw, founder of Unsolved Murders in Philly with Ike Raw. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Your contributions have been invaluable.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for watching Neighbors in the Crossfire. We want to hear from you. Email us at talkback@whly.org. Join us next week at the same time for our series finale, where we take a look at solving the problem. For WHLY, I'm Chris Naris. Good night.
Everybody stop shooting. 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 We lose the faith. Everybody stop shooting.